people do. First of all, the idea that Joe Biden said.
So earlier this week, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said, quote, the U.S. is expected to reach the highest number of people apprehended at the U.S.-Mexico border in 2 decades.
A lot of the migrants coming in saying they're coming in because you promised to make things better. It seems to be getting worse by the day. Was it a mistake not to anticipate this surge?
Well, first of all, there was a surge the last 2 years, in 19 and 20, there was a surge as well.
This one might be worse.
No, well, it could be, but here's the deal. We're sending back people to, first of all, the idea that Joe Biden said come, because I heard the other day that they're coming because they know I'm a nice guy and I won't do what Trump did.
They're saying this.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. They're not.
Do you have to say quite clearly, don't come?
Yes. I can say quite clearly, don't come. And what we're in the process of getting set up, don't leave your town or city or community.
Drivers of the crisis, why exactly this is happening right now, and then what are the main points of contention? What do you think, Yoan?
Well, I mean, I've been covering this region for 20 years and covering particularly Central America over the last decade and seen the real meltdown that's happened in Honduras particularly. And so you've seen this crisis come up again and again. I mean, 2014, there was a child migrant crisis on the border under Obama. That was shut down partly by giving a lot of money to the Central American countries and Mexico to cut the tide of the migrants. In 2018, then we saw this much bigger crisis blow up that we know about. Things were really cut down a bit because of how President Trump kind of handled in this very aggressive way, but also because of the pandemic. And it was funny seeing the interview with President Biden there. I mean, journalists here, we all knew something was going to happen pretty soon. And under Trump, they did some quite extreme things to try and turn this around. One thing was saying that there's a big rise in people claiming asylum in the United States because they're fleeing violence. Now, many of these people you look at in Honduras, in El Salvador, they are fleeing very violent predatory situations. And the numbers were really rocketing. And this was causing a big problem because people were going to the United States and the numbers of people applying for asylum was reaching hundreds of thousands. What the Trump administration did was to say people had to wait in Mexico while they applied for asylum. Mm-hmm. So you saw these big refugee camps emerging on the border with very, very bad conditions. And then a lot of crime against them happening in Mexico. So what Biden did was President Biden said, we're not going to have this, we're going to allow people to come into Mexico. But now you've got this big queue of people on the border waiting to try and get in little by little.
Now, I really didn't plan on making this video, but after Biden got elected, right around that time, my channel got deleted. Things were a little bit crazy. I was looking for work at the time. So I didn't really get to post my analysis of the new press secretary and the Biden administration in general. What little I was able to observe of the press secretary seemed very, very suspicious. And over time, I've watched more and more press conferences, not as much as I was watching before, just a little crazy right now. I get the impression that it's more of the same. It's the polite version of the previous press secretary. So I see the same deflecting tactics, manipulation tactics. And relevant to this video, one of the first things that I saw was when they started talking about the border situation and the crisis. Is it a crisis, right? Would you call what's at the border a crisis? And I saw the little games of, I wouldn't want to use a certain word and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to get it cut. What we want to do is the American people and, humanely and whatever. What? It's a crisis. It was clear to me that a crisis was brewing. Again, I wasn't watching that much at that time, but I could see the warning signs of something going on. I know the difference between Dr. Seuss and Mr. Potato Head and Biden's a communist or socialist. I know the difference between that nonsense and something where there's smoke, there's fire. Sometimes there's smoke and there's no fire because the smoke is maybe smog, right? We get a lot of smog coming from the right. But this looked to me like it was genuine smoke and therefore a genuine fire. So I started looking into it more, and I'm like, it looks like something really bad is going on at the border. And it looks like Biden doesn't want to own up to it. And his press secretary is just deflecting and avoiding it in a nice way. But looking at that interview with Biden, look, man, and the next interview I'm about to show you right now, look, I'm a call it like it is. I know very well the sound of bullshit. And that's what we're getting from the Biden administration regarding what's happening at the border. In fact, I didn't plan to do this video today, but I was watching a Biden staffer, what do you want to call it, who was talking some bullshit, right? And to conservative media, Tim Pool, Steven Crowder, David Shapiro, Ben Shapiro, take note. This is how you do it. Montel, this is how. Okay. Where were you guys the last 4 years with all of the corruption from the Trump administration? Nowhere to be found. Every time something happens, you're so quick to jump in and pander and make excuses and all this kind of nonsense. I don't play that over here. I don't care about Biden. I don't care about Trump. These people, well, Trump was our president, a public servant who has a job to do for the American people, right? I got no feelings about him. I just expect him to do his job. Biden, same thing. None of these guys are my friend. They're not your friends either, right? So when Trump screws up, I call it out. When Biden screws up, I call it out. What's the difference? I'm not on a team. Listen to this. I want you guys to take note that this is CNN. Very, very partisan media. But once again, conservative media is so bad that in comparison, CNN seems very good. Here is CNN actually interviewing this guy and putting his feet to the fire.
Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, thank you so much for joining me this morning, sir. So we have heard reports of children in these border control facilities taking turns sleeping on mats on the floor. Some haven't showered or seen the sun in days. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy said that he fought back tears as a 13-year-old sobbed uncontrollably. So are these conditions at border facilities acceptable to you?
Are these conditions at Border Patrol acceptable to you? You think he's going to say yes or no? I mean, it seems like a simple question. I would say they're not acceptable, and we're working towards making them so that they are acceptable. And this is the plan that we have, and this is the timeline that we have. But I actually have integrity.
Dana, good morning, and thank you very much for having me. I have said repeatedly from the very outset that a Border Patrol station is no place for a child, and that is why we are working around the clock to move those children out of the Border Patrol facilities into the care and custody of the Department of Health and Human Services that shelters them. Let me say also one thing about what Senator Murphy experienced on our trip on Friday to El Paso. That 13-year-old girl who was in tears was a young girl who would have been expelled back into Mexico during the Trump administration. And what we are doing is addressing the humanitarian needs of those children in a way that reflects our values and our principles as a country.
Let me give you guys a tip on how to detect bullshitters. A bullshitter will, when you press them on something that, a failure of theirs, they will talk about, we're working on it, and we're doing our best, and we're doing everything possible to make sure that this happens, right? That's something you might see in the Trump administration for sure. They might even be very snarky about it. But it's not about Trump. It's about bullshitters. That's what bullshitters do. They won't be specific, right? It's just vague. So no matter what's happening, we're working towards it, and we're doing our best, and we want to make sure that the American values and such, and bullshit.
The Biden administration, though, is, as you mentioned, now allowing unaccompanied children into the U.S., different from the Trump administration. But clearly, you don't have the infrastructure to handle this many children right now. As I mentioned, more than 600 children have been in border protection custody for more than 10 days, far longer than is acceptable and allowed by law. That's 3 days. So did you change the policy too quickly without having the infrastructure in place to take care of these children?
That, by the way, is my assessment. It seems that politics got in the way of common sense. So focused were they on this anti-Trump narrative that they prioritized shutting down the evil Trump policies. And I'm sure they are. Trump is an evil man after all. However, when you prioritize the politics of shutting down the policies of a corrupt man like Donald Trump, when you prioritize that over common sense and doing the right thing, I believe that is what ends you up in the situation we are in now. Instead of focusing on how do we improve the situation, what's the right way to do this, let's strategize, let's have conversations, let's solicit suggestions about a better way to do it. Instead of focusing on that, you focus on, oh, we're going to get rid of these Trump policies. I mean, it sounds nice to say, hey, right away you remove these evil Trump policies, but what's going to happen when there's no real plan in place and everything starts falling apart? Oh, that's right. We're witnessing that right now.
Dana, we will not abandon our values and our principles. We will not abandon the needs of vulnerable children. That is what this is all about. We are executing on our
platitudes. That's fine. I like the sentiment. I would hope that that's what you would be doing. However, we have a very specific problem. It is a crisis right now. I think the surge, they said, is the biggest in 20 years or something ridiculous like that. We need a solid and specific plan to resolve it. And if we don't have one, we need a solid plan and specific plan in how we are trying to figure out a plan, right? We need specifics. What exactly are you doing to resolve the problem or to move quickly towards finding a solution for the problem? I don't want to hear about we're working on it and American values and get the hell out of here with that nonsense.
Plan. It does take time. It is difficult. Our plan includes the deployment of the Federal Emergency Management Administration, FEMA, to assist HHS in building its capacity more rapidly to shelter the children. But it is taking time and it is difficult because the entire system was dismantled by the prior administration. There was a system in place in both Republican and Democratic administrations that was torn down during the Trump administration.
I don't want to hear about empty cupboards, man. Get the hell out of here with the empty cupboards. You guys are in charge here, and I don't expect you to work magic. I do understand that it'll take time to resolve things. However, you're not convincing me that you're on a solid path towards solving anything. You know what I mean? It's like, I can appreciate that you're not there yet and you need more time. I'm not an idiot. I do get that. But what I don't appreciate is that you don't really seem like you're on a path to solving this. I see a lot of deflecting and dodging and diving and platitudes. You don't even have a timeline? Come on. But here's partisan CNN pushing back multiple times yet again. Yet again, CNN kicking ass against conservative media. CNN, the ones who are so familiar with amateur hour journalism, they're still able to be better. Right. This is the Debate Me channel. Debate me in the comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well. Joe Biden, I'm relieved that you are in office in comparison to Trump being in office. But that doesn't change the fact that you are a weak politician. You are a liar. I think you had to pull out of running in the past because of your lying. You yourself pulled yourself out. Like, really, guy? I know a lot of Americans are going to be distracted by how much better things are with you in charge versus Trump. I'm not one of them. I don't care about Trump. I'm not comparing you to Trump. I'm looking at you on your own and judging you as a president. And as a president, I'm not impressed.